Hi, this is Shauna, the CEO and founder of Fuel Talent. One of the things I have loved most in my 25-year recruiting career has always been the stories that people tell. Stories of leadership, career choices, company ideas, and team building. My inspiration for starting the What Fuels You podcast came from being curious about people's lives and wanting to help share their stories. What path brought them to this place? What decisions did they make that led to failures and successes? Who influenced those decisions, and what lessons were learned along the way? I hope you enjoy the What Fuels You podcast. Ian Morris is today's guest on the What Fuels You podcast. Ian was at Microsoft for 7 years before spending over a decade at Market Leader as the president and CEO. Ian took the real estate software company public in 2004 and later sold it to Trulia in 2013. Now he's the co-founder and CEO of Likewise, an innovative startup that began as an idea in Bill Gates' private office and is backed by Bill Gates. They're reimagining the way that people find great recommendations through their Likewise app and website. Ian also sits on several boards. He's a loving husband and father. Welcome, Ian.
Thank you.
I'm excited to talk about Likewise because I now depend on it when I don't know what to do with myself, and I've got that one little window of time and I want to find a good show or something. So thank you for starting it and running it.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you for plugging it and for having me.
Of course. So we're going to start with rapid fire. Given that you're Mr. Tennis, do you hate to lose or love to win?
I would say in life I love to win. In tennis, it might be a little bit more of the hate to lose.
You're not like a racket thrower there or anything weird.
I'm not a racket thrower. I might occasionally let it slip out of my hand a few feet, but then I feel really bad.
And embarrassed.
Totally embarrassed because I played in high school and I was not nuts in high. I mean, as teenage boys go, I was not too crazy, but some of those kids were just such. And I was on the East. I was in New Jersey, so take anything in the Seattle area up 3 notches.
Yes.
And I couldn't believe the behavior. So anytime I start to get hot under the collar on the court, I think you're becoming that person.
Yeah.
And it's worse because you don't have the excuse of being a 16-year-old boy.
Yeah. And it's not like some tournament that's crazy or something. Okay. What is the most recommended book on Likewise? You might not know this off the top of your head.
I should have looked that up off the top of my head. I can tell you some I see go by a lot. Educated is one. We have a lot of that. That's one particularly
that's
trending.
On my bedside.
Particularly trending with women. That's one. You see a lot of, you see a real mix. You see a lot of business books as well.
Mm-hmm.
I love, Gladwell and Michael Lewis, and you see business books as well. We have some just incredibly avid readers. There's somebody on Likewise who is there just an evangelist for reading. Their goal is to read 10,000 books, and they just keep every couple days. I see Sheldon's, recommending another book. And
is Sheldon's the name? So for people on Likewise, we have to look for Sheldon.
Sheldon
What's his last name? Raposa. Okay, we'll look him up. Which 3 words would you use to describe your leadership style?
Passionate, authentic, and probably tenacious.
Nice. Introvert or extrovert?
People think I'm an extrovert. I am not an extreme introvert, but I'm definitely on the introvert side of the line. And it takes a lot out of me to go to things like industry conferences when I was CEO of Market Leader, and I would speak at them, and then it would be a 15-hour day of cocktail parties. And I would, by the time I got to the cocktail party stage, my brain was just trying to get upstairs to watch a Seinfeld or Family Guy rerun or something.
You wanted to shut down.
It was just absolutely shut down.
Yeah. Are you stronger in the forehand or backhand?
That's a hard one because I think my forehand may be a little stronger, but I'm definitely someone, I think most people's forehand is stronger.
Always,
I'm much more balanced. My backhand is the better. It may not be better than my forehand, but it's the better shot because there's a lot of guys with big forehands. Mm-hmm. Mine's not that big. My backhand is strong.
Are you two-handed or one-handed?
Two-handed.
Oh, yeah, so me too. Yeah. Old school. So is that probably what threw off your back when I saw you a couple of years ago? And your back was all jacked up.
So my back, I have a history going back to when it's embarrassing to admit, 14 years old, I think was the first time I threw out my back. And it just would come and go, very acute. I'd throw it out.
I had the same thing. I had the exact same thing. It's overuse.
So I did something a year and a half ago that people have been telling me to do for 20 years. I want to knock wood, but it's been good ever since. For 20 years, people have been telling me, whether it's a doctor, a trainer, a PT, a chiro, Ian, Your wiring is not normal. You don't feel anything in the right places. If you don't start doing yoga, you're going to break down. And I refused to do it because it sounded horrible to me. And then I threw my back out probably when I saw you 3 times in the space of about 9 months. I was playing tennis 7 days a week. And I don't know if tennis was related to the cause or whatever, but I was like, this is ridiculous.
So yoga?
I do yoga twice a week, individual instructor. When I reached out to try to find an instructor.
You have to go to True Fusion. My brother started a gym in Bellevue. In your building. Hello, you need to go.
Oh, that's
True Fusion.
Yeah, that's funny.
They literally have like yoga
I know
specialists.
what you're talking about now.
Just go check it out. I'll give you like a pass or something. Okay. Which entrepreneur do you most admire? Or would you most want to like have lunch with and just learn from?
I mean,
don't say Elon Musk.
I know.
Please
like
don't.
I knew you were going to say. Like, I mean, he is fascinating, right? Because it's not just about being an entrepreneur. He actually attacks problems that most of us would just look at and say, like, well,
this is impossible.
This is impossible. Well, and not just that, but like just hearing what I've heard, it's just he'll learn more about rocket science than his rocket scientists. And of course, I don't have that capability. I'm not that smart. So that he's a fascinating one.
Just the way he goes so deep on things.
Yeah. I mean, I tend to be most interested in people who have skills that I could never in a million years replicate. And I'm not a specialist like that, and I wouldn't have the intellectual capacity to go deep on something like that, no matter how much I wanted to.
Yeah. So I should probably just stop asking that question because it's pretty much like I can just be like, cut, paste, Elon Musk.
That's too bad.
Shit, maybe I should have him on the podcast somehow. Anybody know Elon Musk? Give me a call. Okay, so you're from New Jersey?
New Jersey.
Where in Jersey?
Fair Lawn, New Jersey. North Jersey. I am a Jersey boy, basically typical suburb of New York City. So that side of Jersey, not the Pennsylvania side.
And where's your wife, Lisa, from?
She's from Brooklyn.
She's from Brooklyn.
And for years, when we moved out here, people say, where are you from? And I'd say, we're from New York. Because you're general.
He's from Jersey.
Exactly.
Because there's a distinction once you've lived in New York. But Brooklyn would be my favorite place to say I was from. I'd love to be like, I'm from Brooklyn.
Yeah,
it's like I'm a tough person.
She leads with it, and she doesn't really do it to me as much anymore. But for years, it was kind of like, I'm from Brooklyn. He's from New Jersey. And it's just, and for someone who is very much, that is not her style, but
yeah, she doesn't strike me as a Brooklyn girl.
No, the Brooklyn girl is there, but she's not the type who wants to correct me. But the one thing she would never let me get away with was claiming New York. Even though I was from Brooklyn for 5 or 6 years, but that doesn't count.
Yeah, New Yorkers take that stuff super seriously. So you grew up in Jersey. Did you go to private school, public school?
Public.
And your parents, tell me about your parents.
Oh, my parents are great. They're
still alive?
Doing great. They're still alive. They're doing great. My father, my mother was home with us while we were kind of in the formative years or whatever you want to call it. She went back to teaching afterwards. She loved teaching before, and she ended up having, it's fantastic. She had an entire second career after raising myself and my sister. She went back and she taught for, I think, close to 20 years.
Mm-hmm. You have a sister is older or younger?
3 years younger.
3 years younger. So you're the older brother.
I'm the older brother, and my dad was on Wall Street for 40 or so years, worked in Manhattan, and really I was completely fascinated with everything he did growing up. It was the 80s.
Oh,
I wanted to be on
Wolf of Wall Street. Was he a trader?
He was actually something that I don't think exists anymore. He was both a broker. Well, brokers in themselves don't. He was a broker, but he came at it. He was an analyst. He was a research analyst. So I don't think those two jobs would ever be together anymore. But what he discovered was, he came at it. He was an analytical person. He was originally a CPA, got into Wall Street, became, did a really great job with his research, and just realized over time that he could do better in picking stocks from doing the research, picking the stocks, and then people started following him, so he became a broker. So he really had kind of a hybrid job.
He could be like a hedge fund guy.
Yeah, I mean, in today's world.
And so did he specialize in a certain sector?
He started in oil and gas, but he played everything. In fact, I still remember, it's funny, the things that stick with you. I remember a bunch of the stocks that he played and I was interested in played. Topps Chewing Gum, the baseball card company, and I had been into baseball cards, and when I was a teenager,
Dad, double down on this one.
He was him, and he just, I watched that stock, double and then double again. And you don't think of it that way, but if you remember when Tofuti first came out, the company I remember was Tofu Time, and he was in on that pre-public, writing that, and that thing went crazy.
Yeah.
So I was fascinated by that stuff early on.
Did you think you were going to go the Wall Street route?
I was certain I was going to go the Wall Street route, and this is why I always talk to young people about not being so certain, because
you never know.
You never know. I got into college and
so Bryant University, what? I don't even know that school.
Smithfield, Rhode Island. It was Bryant College when I went there. Now it's Bryant University, very fancy.
Is it a small school?
It's small, yeah. It's 3,200 students. It was completely focused on business, and as I just mentioned, I know what I want. I'm going to go Wall Street, whatever. I was a finance major, and it was one of the best breaks I ever got in my life, because what ended up happening at Bryant was I ended up starting a bunch of small companies, and ended up, for me, that kind of turning point for me in career was, oddly enough, in college, where I just gained a lot of confidence and started a bunch of businesses. Also realized through that I really liked the managing people aspect and the getting things done through people, and completely turned off Wall Street. And
what are these companies that you started in college?
It was all student run stuff. It was like
illegal
students. No, it wasn't anything that clever. No, it was. It's a complicated, but there was a separate company that operated on the campus, and I basically got involved in that, and then was running that, and then started a bunch of new businesses. I published the school directory. We actually ran the school bar, if you could believe it. We opened a retail store. We opened a travel agency. I'm old.
What?
We opened a travel agency. We took over the
vending
vending
things
contract.
Profitable, money-making things? Yeah. So what'd you do with that money?
No. So it wasn't that kind of profitable. It was.
You made some money?
We made some money, yeah.
So you hired your friends?
There was, it was about 100 employees throughout the school. It was a
Literally?
It was a great experience. It was,
what?
But it really did flip me from that thought of I want to be like a Wall Street guy to no, I want to work with people, and that's not it completely, and it was quick. It was I realized from doing that, all the things that were firing me up would not be in that world that I had so coveted.
Yes.
And I still loved, watching my dad do it, and I still was always interested, but I had no interest in it as a career.
Did you work in high school, or more just focus on school and tennis?
Yeah, and tennis, you're giving me too much credit. I know you were a superstar at that age. I played high school tennis. I was the captain of my tennis team my senior year, but it was a pretty mediocre team, and I was a pretty mediocre player.
So growing up, would your friends have been in this room sitting here and duh, obviously Ian's going to be the entrepreneur? Were you cool kid, nerdy kid, band kid?
I was not the cool kid. I wasn't. I would say I was closer to the nerdy kid than the cool kid, but I was definitely somewhere. I know it sounds like a lame answer. I was definitely somewhere in between. I wasn't.
Yeah,
I was neither, pushing people downstairs nor getting pushed down the stairs.
Yeah.
But
you were studious.
I was okay. I wasn't a great student, as you just pointed out. I went to Bryant University.
Well, it's not. Honestly, I just don't even know. I didn't research it.
It's a good school, but it's not. It's not.
Yeah, but then you went to HBS. Let's be honest.
Then I went to HBS, but I will tell you, to answer your question of just did people expect you to be here? I can remember my 5th or 10th year high school reunion. You come back and you're seeing people for the first time, and everyone's like, "And what are you doing now?" I was like, I guess it was 5th year, because I'm at business school. Oh, where? Harvard Business School. And the looks, everyone's trying to be polite, and it's not like I was a bad student, but it was so much fun, because everyone was just had this moment of freezing up. Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah.
But clearly they didn't see Ivy.
It wasn't obvious.
It wasn't obvious. And again, I was a good student, but not that.
So after you graduated from Bryant, why didn't you just kind of propel your business thing? Why did you need an MBA?
I didn't go straight for an MBA. I still needed a job. This was student-run stuff. This was not a future in that way. But I don't know what I was doing coming at it. I was looking for a job because everyone looked for a job. And at Bryant, a lot of people went into insurance and banking and things like that, very business-oriented. New England, it was in New England. It's in Rhode Island, very New England. And I got recruited to do a management training program at all places, Aetna. So not exactly the world I ended up in. And I got some great experience there. And then I caught another terrific break, which was I was doing great in this job. I had gotten a performance review. This is something I could talk to kids about all that. I got a performance review one night in a new job that I'd gotten, which was a big promotion. I'd only been there about a year and a half. I was in this job for about 3 months in my performance review, because it was an annual thing for the school, for the company. And I got this fantastic review, and I went home I got this promotion, and now my boss says I'm in the top few percent of the company, and aren't I great? And the next morning I walked in and was told that my division had been eliminated and I had no job. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me in my life, because I was on a path, right? I was like moving up and on a path, and it wasn't the path I intended. I wanted to be an entrepreneur.
You could be like Ian Morris, and general manager of the blank division of Aetna.
And what a great life lesson to learn at such a young age, that like, here I was in this world and I was doing well. And I learned that like, here, someone's telling you, you're great, you're doing so terrific in this role. And then the next day you're fired. And the obvious lesson was, don't you want to be in a world where you're in control rather than other people are in control? How can you be, both at the same time doing this? You're doing great. And by the way, your boss who just told you this is eliminated, and the whole little mini division you're in was eliminated. And that's when I started looking at business schools. Yeah. And to get back on that entrepreneurial path.
Was it like a stretch for you to get into HBS, and how did you go about it?
I think I think with any of these schools, I think it's a crapshoot. I applied to one. I applied to HBS. I wanted to go to HBS.
That's bold.
I didn't expect to get in. So the job was eliminated. I was picked up like a week later. So I was never out of work. I was picked up at Aetna like a week later in another job that worked out great. So I didn't have a gun to my head about business school. I had never done well on the SATs and things like that. Didn't want to take the GMATs. HBS didn't require the GMATs. I made a decision. Hey, I like my job. I'm good with this job. I don't want to take one of those crazy Kaplan classes because I'll hate it.
Like if I get in, I'll go.
If I get in, and if I don't, I'll apply to 7 or 8 top schools next year and I'll get into one of those. Yeah. But I thought, wouldn't it be great to just focus on, like, do a great job on this application and see if I get in.
So tell me about the application. Like, how did you get in?
At the time, at least, can't speak to today, HBS did not look at GMATs. They valued the experience. As I mentioned, in college, I had some really cool, distinctive experiences. And I think it was like 9 or 10 essays. And that I went out when I planned it out. I had the questions printed out. I had Post-it notes, and I went out with some friends, had 2 beers, and then locked myself, I kind of like just the right amount to get the creative, and just spent a weekend kind of putting here are the stories I have to tell. I felt like I had a lot of good ones between college and the job for a couple of years, and I just mapped them out, and I spent no time. I didn't take a Kaplan class or any of those things. I spent that time on the application,
digging deep into like what was compelling. Do you feel like today they want to hear ways that you've overcome obstacles to get into schools? I keep hearing those types of stories. I think you have to have been through something. Did you have anything to talk about that was like,
I didn't grow up in a fancy household or anything, but I think I was pretty fortunate, a very stable house. So I don't think I had any massive stories. They do definitely want to hear. I mean, we both have, kids, and they do want to hear those stories, but I also think the world has gotten much worse as far as the tests and all that.
Like none of us would get into any of these schools
That's
now.
how I feel. I mean, I don't think
no,
I
100%.
get into this today.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And so have you been able to stay in touch with your high school and college friends?
High school friends, there's a couple of the close ones that I'm in, the in touch, the texts on the birthday but I wouldn't say I'm close. Few from college, few from business school. Being in Seattle, doesn't help. I do make an effort. I always go to the HBS reunions because I feel like that was so much a part of what you bought and what you enjoyed and going to HBS. And I think people don't pass through Seattle every day. So it's not like people are constantly popping in. Yeah. So that's one way I kind of always stay at least a little connected, is go to those reunions and just reconnect with people and have a good time.
Are relationships outside of your wife and your children and your kind of business associates important to you, like your friendships?
Extremely.
And so how do you go about nurturing them?
I mean, and I don't think I'm great at it, frankly. It's something my wife and I talk about all the time, is like the list of people, we got to get together with them.
We should really be seeing them.
Yes, and we have it's one of those to-do lists that grows every week and never comes down.
I don't know if you've experienced this, but when they talk about the Seattle freeze, they're not talking about people not being kind. They're just saying they're really warm, but then actually executing on like seeing each other in the follow through. And in New York, that's not really the case. It's more like if someone's saying, let's get together, it happens. Yeah, you're like, great, let's get out our calendar, let's make it happen.
It is confused. I mean, I've been out here almost 24 years now, and it's still a little confusing.
Yeah. Who actually wants to hang? And sometimes it just happens organically, though, like who's in front of you from tennis or from the kids or
and
running into someone.
I think the contrast with the New York area has always been interesting to me. The way I think of it is, back east, you don't get the benefit of the doubt. People look at you. You could almost go to hold the door open for someone, and they'll look at you like, what's your angle kind of thing. That would never happen here. People are much friendlier here in that very superficial way. But in New York, if you're in the circle, people will stand in front of a bullet for you. So it's an interesting dynamic. It's way nicer to raise kids, I think, frankly, out here because they start off genuinely supportive, where in New York you can end up getting attitude from some stranger and you're like, I didn't do I don't know what happened to you today, but it didn't come from me.
Yeah. So what brought you to Seattle? Was it your Microsoft role?
It was Microsoft. So I had a business school. While I was in HBS, I got the internet bug like crazy. It was a little early for it. I was there 93 to 95, and it just struck me as this is the railroad of the future. I had no tech experience. I got an interview with Microsoft, which frankly didn't interest me that much. Microsoft overall, it sounds horrible to say, but I didn't want to go work on Microsoft Word or something. And I had no interest in Seattle. But I was focused on, the internet, starting my own business, potentially right out of business school. And I got the opportunity to work on the launch of MSN. And I had a business idea that I was pursuing on my own. And maybe someone could argue I'm too calculated and maybe this was risk averse, but I think it was the right decision. I just decided I really had no tech experience. I really didn't know what I was doing. And I just thought Microsoft's going to pay me to get in on the ground floor of something I believe will fundamentally change everything for decades to come. I should do that. Now, I was unrealistic in that I told my folks and Lisa's folks and, that this is a year or two max, and then I can go anywhere I want and blah, 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 blah. And of course, that was 24 years ago. So that was...
That's the case for everything now, right? So when did you meet Lisa?
I met Lisa. I met her originally. We didn't meet in college, but we were kind of both in college. She went to Syracuse. It was one of those just random meetings where it was nothing planned. There was my aunt taught with her mom.
Was it like one of those like setups?
Oh God, no. It was not. It was not a setup. But so you'll get a kick out of this. It was not a setup. We just happened to randomly meet, and I asked her out. She later told me, because of this random connection, she was at my aunt's wedding, and I asked her to dance originally when we were like 15 or 16 or something.
Oh.
So it was a little one of those Harry Met Sally type things where like I tell the story one way and then she points out like, yeah, but 4 years earlier you
Yeah. So you came out here, you did Microsoft MSN for 7 years. How would you have described your experience there as far as the culture and what you learned?
So I think it was a very different culture then. I was incredibly impressed with just the sheer intelligence of the people. That sounds silly, but it's like I think Microsoft's greatest strength was who they were recruiting. I thought so I appreciated that because I felt like I was working out every day just to hang in there with other just really bright people. And most people I'd look at and go, they're much smarter than me, but I can hang in there. The downside of that was they were all, unlike today, they were all new. They were all right out of school or right out of business school. And despite the fact that everyone was so smart, the culture, most people just assumed everyone around them was stupid or at least behaved that way. So there was a lot of attitude and aggressiveness that wasn't productive. There were some great things that came out of it. And we built some amazing things. And I played my little role, but the company did fantastic. And it did because it had great people. But when I ran a group there, I purposely set out to create a totally different culture. And I think I succeeded at it, of just like recruiting only certain people to that group. Because I didn't see the need to be, you could get the same stuff. Yeah, the bravado, the flame mails as they're called, they were completely counterproductive. So you could get great people and have them play nice together for the most part. It wasn't, I don't want to sound like a softie because I'm an aggressive person, but you just don't need that extra.
It's just a distraction.
Attack the outside. Don't attack the inside.
Yeah, we're actually on the same team.
Exactly.
We have the same goal. Yeah, that totally makes sense. And so, I know you got recruited to do Market Leader. That's right out of our House Values. Was that right out of Microsoft?
Yeah. So the group that I ended up running at Microsoft, it was, this is back in the day. I'm dating myself again, but, Microsoft had started up, or groups had started in Microsoft, very incubator-oriented, that became like Expedia and Investor and CarPoint. And a few of us created what became known as Microsoft HomeAdvisor, which has nothing to do with the HomeAdvisor that you see today. The name has been sold over the years, but it was one of the original real estate portals back in 97, 98. So I had no particular interest in real estate, but I was suddenly found myself, speaking at major real estate conferences not because they wanted Ian Morris, they could care less about me. They wanted to know what this evil empire Microsoft was going to do to their commissions. And so I found myself knowing nothing about real estate and keynoting, national conferences. And then house values.
You're being humble, but okay.
No, they didn't know anything about me, and I didn't know anything truly. I mean, I was a technology person who was interested, but I wasn't particularly interested in the space. And they really did just want to get at, like, what is Microsoft going to do to me? Because, you have to transport yourself back to, it was a different time. It was right around the time DOJ was getting interested in Microsoft. I mean, everyone was petrified of us. Microsoft was the tech company,
it's
right?
Like Amazon. Today.
Plus, right? I mean, it was almost like Amazon and Google and Facebook melded together. I mean,
wow.
The government didn't get on their case for nothing. It was a dominant company. And so an industry like real estate, which was still kind of a local-ish business, they felt that this was the thing that was going to come and get them.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, I got recruited. There was a company called House Values that had been started by a local real estate agent. And it was doing well. It was doing lead generation in the real estate industry, and it was outgrowing the founder. And the founder felt like it was probably, to be successful, was going to outgrow him. And Second Avenue partners here locally were interested, and they recruited me to come in and kind of as number 2 and probably become the number 1. And that's what happened.
And did they seed the whole company to begin with, or he did this real estate guy?
The real estate agent kind of
put in his own money.
Yeah, I don't think he had that much of it. So he got some angel money, and then Second Avenue Partners, which was just, business never would have been successful without them. I mean, it's worth. I mean, this is Pete Higgins and Nick Hanauer were involved from the beginning, and they, Mark, the original founder, I think he got turned down, 100, 150 times before Second Avenue came in. So this was not an obvious thing.
Yeah. And when you took over as CEO, where was the company and where did it ultimately end up?
Company was, it was getting to about 20 million in revenue. So it wasn't tiny. It was one very, very basic business model though. So it was a very simple business. And with my impeccable timing, it had grown, every month, 23 was growing like crazy. The month I joined was the first flat month.
What was the business model at the time?
It was, if you may even remember it when I say it, but House Values was a lead generation site. And you would say, like, if you, thinking of selling your home, find out what it's worth. Go to housevalues.com.
So like Zestimate
Like
now.
Zestimate. This was years
Zillows.
before the Zestimate. And we did TV advertising. They were not on the internet. So it was an internet company, as it was called, that had no idea what to do with the internet, but we did use it to send the leads to real estate agents. And it was a limited model, but it had done very well. And I came in and the business was flat, but I came in with a kind of vision of what thought it could be. And it took a little while to get there, but we ended up, I had to do an acquisition to get me one piece that was missing that I didn't think we could build.
Which was that?
It was the relationships with the multiple listing services. I had a very specific, I don't want to bore you with, but a very specific business model that I thought they could move naturally from what they were doing to this. And once we did that, after being flat for, at 20-ish million for a year and a half, we went from 20 to 100 in like 22 months or something like that.
Oh my gosh.
And so
So
that
your
was when the
instincts
IPO
served you well.
Yeah, I mean, it was a rare situation where I'm wrong way more than I'm right. That was a rare situation where the plan that I drew up when I sat with Nick and Pete the first time and talked about what I thought we could do.
Yes.
It took longer than I expected. But
and were they on the board?
They were on the board, and they stayed on the board right through the IPO, the sale.
Yeah. Who took the company public?
I took by then the founder wasn't really involved. I took the company public.
And which bank did you use?
We had CSFB, we had JP Morgan, we had Thomas Weisel. We had a big the IPO market had been closed for a few years because this was during the tech downturn. And when we started taking off, most people had never heard of us, but there is clearly the bankers, I know it's their job to find these things, but bankers just started showing up at the doorstep. We could have really gone public with just about anybody.
Yeah.
They were knocking. It was fascinating learning to see how aggressive those guys were. They wanted house values to be one of the first companies, and Google came out.
And what year was that?
This was 2004.
2004. And then it was, sorry, Google.
Google came out in I think it was August of 2004, and that kind of unofficially reopened the IPO. Nothing had gone public. Google came out, was a huge success. We were going through the roof, and so the bankers started knocking. We went public in December of 2004, and so it was a great experience.
Was it different for you being the CEO of a publicly traded company, and how did your life change?
People ask a lot about that, and it was a tough time to do it because this was post Enron and post all those blow ups. So there was a lot of new regulation, and people were like, "Oh God, must have ruined your life." I didn't mind it that much. There was definitely annoyances of it, but it wasn't, the hard part was, when things were great, that was great. When the real estate downturn hit and we were in big trouble, it's a little bit like being in the public square taking a shower.
Yeah.
You're public, you can't hide anything.
Yeah.
And so there's a discipline of that, and there's a pain of that. And it's not just out to the markets, but because you have to file all these things, if your pay packages are public, and if someone goes on sabbatical, and all these little nuanced things, your employees see these things. So it does require a level of discipline and forethought.
For sure.
But I'm not one of these people who goes, "Oh, don't ever go public." I mean, it was manageable, and there were some good people and some not so good people at all.
And so you're a publicly traded company. Now you've got probably tons of employees at this point. You're $100 and something million company.
Yeah, we probably were at 600. We got to about 600 employees and a little over 100 million in revenue.
And then in 2013 sold to Trulia.
Yeah, although in between was the tough part. That was the defining moments. Everything was, when we took the company public, we were the fourth fastest growing technology company in North America over a 5-year period. Google was one, and they beat us by a lot. And you know what, the great life lesson there was like headhunters, executive recruiters, they were calling all the time. Like, got this pre-public company, you're the guy, blah, 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 blah. When the real estate market cratered, we were completely exposed. I did not do a good job of preparing us for that. I guess in fairness, I don't think anybody thought it would ever get as deep as it did, but regardless, shame on me. We were not prepared for it. We got ransacked. And the one good thing we did was, again, I had a great board, and we made a decision to, not defend the top line, not try to prove that we're this great growing business, and instead take this very profitable company with a pile of cash and live to fight another day. So we had to take the company down in size dramatically, went from a peak of close to 600 employees to a trough of about 140. It's horrible. A lot of Ambien for me. I can't speak for everybody else. It was a miserable period. I'm glad I've great wife, great family. That was good because I was not a happy camper, and I felt like it was my mess. I wasn't going anywhere. And it was 5 years of challenges, and no one took us seriously. We were completely, the markets paid no attention. They didn't want to invest in real estate anyway. And, I probably went 5 years. I didn't get a single call from a recruiter because we live in a society where there's heroes and goats. And I had been a hero. I was a genius, and which I never believed, thank goodness. And then I was a moron, which thank goodness I didn't really believe either. But we did have a plan, and it took far longer to pay off than we thought. But the business started growing like mad again. And everything was working. And then the real estate market turned around. So we got a nice tailwind in addition to a business that was already starting to really play. I had built a good base with Wall Street. They had started paying attention and started to believe. And so the stock was taking off. But I had already lived through the pain of cyclicality, and I knew what it meant now as a slightly older, more experienced person. And Trulia, we had talked about some different relationships with Trulia. Trulia and Zillow were battling it out to kind of own the consumer side of real estate. We owned the back office side, the CRM and the websites and all the things the realtors use to run their business. So we were a natural fit with either one of those, and Trulia stepped up and paid a very nice price. It was a great outcome for our shareholders and our employees, which I was most proud of. And later Zillow brought Trulia. It really worked out pretty well for everybody.
Oh, yeah. It sounds like a win-win-win. So, yeah, $355 million in 2013. And so I remember when I ran into you and talked to you several years later, maybe it was a couple of years later, so 2016 or 17, and was thinking maybe you'd just be on the Pro Leisure Tour kind of playing tennis. And I know you were on a few boards, and involved and engaged. Obviously, you've got kids, but what made you come back to work and start working at Likewise and take that opportunity?
Yeah, it wasn't very intentional. And I will say, my wife, Lisa, who I try to listen to because she's usually right, was like, Ian,
we're doing this
you're
again.
Happy. Like,
yes.
you trust me. I know you.
Wait, we
you're
threw
happy.
out the
What
Ambien.
Yeah, exactly. I was long off the Ambien. I really enjoyed the board work, and I was on a bunch of boards at this point. I just liked advising CEOs.
All tech type of companies?
All
or
tech, mostly software as a
any
service.
nonprofits?
Not boards, no. Lisa does a few of those, and we're active, but I'm not usually. I don't know that I do too well in a.
You'd be like, hurry up.
I've joined a couple, and I would come home angry, and I don't feel like at that point I'd rather be supportive financially, and Lisa does a better job with those. I get a little crazy. But so I was enjoying the boards, and I mean, truthfully, I wouldn't have gotten back in. The situation was special enough where, this idea germinated in Bill Gates' private office. Larry Cohen, who is the head of Gates Ventures, Michael Dix, who's a good friend of his and runs Intentional Futures, and I are friends. We're talking, Larry had originally kind of dreamt this up.
What was the exact idea at the time?
It was about solving the simple problem. I shouldn't say simple problem, but the problem of recommendations. And if you think about the world, and I say recommendations, and people immediately think of rating and review sites. They think of things like Yelp and TripAdvisor,
or thinking of just like
IMDb.
why you even are on Facebook anymore is because you just want to find that one post that somebody said, great book, going on a trip, and then you're like, oh. Where did that post go?
Right.
Like that's why I used Facebook for the last few years.
And the Facebook example is closer, except for the part about finding the post on stuff, is closer to what reality is than all of the rating review sites that people think of. What we found was people, they use services like, I don't want to pick on anyone, like the Yelps, TripAdvisor, IMDb's, because it's better than nothing, right? You have this rating, but in the end, what the heck does a 4-star lasagna taste like?
Yeah.
I don't know what that means. So the idea for Likewise was, let's start with the way people do this in real life, which is social recommendations.
They ask their friends.
Friend-based recommendations. And we started with some guiding principles as well. The site, Likewise, the app, this website there's no negative reviews. Like, if you're passionate about something, whether it's a movie or a show or a book, whatever, recommend it.
Yeah.
If you don't, I don't want to hear your rants. I've never once called a friend and said, I'm going to be in Chicago next week. Tell me some places to avoid.
Tell me what not to read or what not to eat. Not to eat.
That negative energy is really in consumer psyche. It's not just, I'm sure you feel it, I feel it. And when we did research, we found people are like, I don't want to hear these people yelling about, the waiter. Right? If you want to feel that way, you turn on the news.
Yes.
Right? So Likewise really is focused on how do we let people share the things they're passionate about with people they care about. And of course, how do we let them learn about those things? So it's a kind of interesting combination of, machine learning to when you first join, and if your friends aren't on there, how do we help you find movies, TV shows, books, podcasts, things like that based on you tell us some things you like. But the idea then is get your friends on and you'll see what your friends who you care about, what they're reading are reading, and you see what they're liking. And people really love it for things like streaming services like Netflix and Prime and Hulu. That's where we've really seen it take off.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. So is there anything that you would do differently if you were starting Likewise today? What have you learned so far? Because it's been now 2.5 years?
Yeah, 2 years. I mean, depending on where you draw the starting line. It's been about 2 years since we were official, but we're probably working on it before that. Yeah, I think we bet too heavily on the social piece and not enough on the machine learning at first. We knew it would be hard to start with a cold start, but we were so passionate and people respond so passionately to the idea of I want recommendations for my friends that we built the app originally on that premise. And the truth is that's a really, really hard thing to do because you're starting with a cold start. And what we found much more success in doing is bring someone in, have them put in front of them, as you've seen in a lot of things, particularly with media type things like TV and so on. Tell me 5 or 10 things that you've liked. We'll put things in front of you. I liked it. And then we'll start recommending a few things that you may not have heard of that are new to Netflix or on Hulu or whatever. And then from there, transitioning to, this gets even better if your friends are on, and people get that. They want the people in the mom group on. They want their college buddies on. So we've really, I would start with these, what we call single player mode, kind of that very much machine driven recommendations, and then focus on moving people down. I think we lost some time by starting with this very ambitious goal of like, come see what your friends are. I mean, they're not there yet.
So what's the business model? How do you make money?
Money? We're supposed to make money?
Yes, eventually.
We will make money. I will tell you, one of the things from the beginning of this was we knew how hard this was going to be. There is nobody working on business model today. If there is, it's me, and I'm not. I mean, and that was set out amongst the founders from the beginning. Like, we need to raise capital. We need to build a user base. If we build an engaged user base, there will be other people who really want to invest in Likewise. And the first thing they're going to say is, don't worry about monetization. Go catch fire, build a bigger user base. And my attitude from the beginning was, that was, if we were really successful. And if we didn't build a user base and catch fire and get engaged users, the fact that we had built some ad model was going to be the difference between having no cash and having like 4 days of cash. So why, as someone who's it's hard running a company. It's hard getting people focused. Why introduce the person into the room who's going to be saying like, no, you need to reserve that part of the
show
screen.
Me the money.
I mean, the reality is we're in the middle of a decision. There is so many natural ways to monetize this. So many people who want their show, their movie, their restaurant marketed that it's, and we don't have to invent anything there. You've seen, the advertising models of Facebook and Instagram, and the more referral type based things of, ad models of Yelp and TripAdvisor. So there's well-worn paths that we'll want to have our own take on and probably be more positive than some of those. But we don't need to solve them up front. We will eventually have to solve them. It is not a nonprofit. Yeah. But it's not the biggest problem we face. The biggest problem we face is going to be getting millions and millions of very engaged users. I mean, you can get users on the service.
But how do you get them to engage?
How do you get them engaged? How do you build daily
Well,
habits?
that's got to be the interface and just the ease of using it. And that seems like it's changing constantly.
Yeah. I mean,
because I've been on from the very beginning, and it seems like you're constantly looking at that.
Yeah, we're getting more and more focused. We've seen real dramatic uptake with movies, TV shows, books, and podcasts over some of the more local based things of, people like talking about restaurants and so on, but it's a different category. It's a little bit of a different category. You still want the friend-based recommendations. There is mass frustration over, how do I figure out what to watch? I have a limited amount of time. I want to figure out what my next binge thing is going to be. I don't know what's on my services.
But Netflix is doing that. They're like, you liked these 5 things, you should watch these 5 things.
How many shows on Hulu has Netflix recommended to you?
Yeah, that's the problem.
And by the way, how many...
Or Amazon Prime, or Amazon Video.
And by the way, how good of a job is Netflix going to do if it doesn't know what you liked on Prime and Hulu? Oh, and by the way, you can see I have some passion around this. In the next 3 months, Apple launches their premium streaming service. Disney launches their premium service.
Right. We need to aggregate all of it.
A few months later, Warner Brothers is launching HBO Max. NBC Universal is launching. Viacom and CBS just merged.
Okay, so all my friends, please get on Likewise because I need efficiency.
You are going to need it because this world of a Netflix-dominated world, it's done. That's not to say Netflix isn't going to do well, but basically every consumer who's interested in television right now is their own cable company assembling their own package. It hasn't seemed that way yet because there's only a few big players, but there's over 300 streaming services, and the big guys are just about to pile in.
Yeah, I like the way that you put that when you're like, hey, we are our own.
We're our own
cable.
And we don't want, nobody wants to be that.
Yes.
Now picture having one place you can go to recommend something and one place that is making recommendations to you, as well as when you and I are talking and you tell me a show I should be watching. I don't have the memory of a 22-year-old. I just click, I enter into Likewise, one place for everything, movies, books, TV shows.
You're just like tagging it.
Yes, and it doesn't care that it knows I have Hulu and I have Netflix and so on. What good is a watch list if I have 9 of them?
Yeah. Oh no,
right? So Likewise
totally
is the watch list.
I like that. I'm
glad.
I'm getting really excited to go home and watch TV. Okay, so you got funded by Bill Gates and just Bill Gates?
Today it is Gates Frontiers, which is Bill Gates.
And how much
venture
money
arm.
did he put in?
That we haven't. We haven't. That is not something we've disclosed publicly.
Come on, Ian.
It's one of the good things of not having to run a public company.
Ian.
You don't have to share everything. But
it's enough that you're not panicking.
No, I'm not panicking.
You've got some time to build this.
Yeah, we need to be successful. I mean, it is a for-profit venture. They are in this for money, but it's also something that there's some passion around.
Yeah.
I mean, for perspective, Gates Notes, which publishes Bill's book picks. Now, he's Bill Gates, in fairness, but 90 million people follow it.
Yeah.
People care what other people think.
Yes.
They're looking for a way to cut through the clutter, and so they get this. And by the way,
how many followers does he have on Likewise?
Oh, I'd have to look. I'm sorry.
Oh, God. I'm going to look
it's some thousands, but it's not. I mean,
it's not 90 million.
No, we're not. We haven't gone out and gotten that aggressive with customer acquisition. We have work to do as far as the engagement is more important than the acquisition, right? How do you engage them? How do you build daily habits and retain people?
Yes.
So that's a lot of focus. But
do you ever do targeted ads on Facebook?
Of course.
So how have you gone about, well, first of all, you've done this, now this is B2C, as you mentioned. How would you compare it to B2B? Which do you prefer? Where's your lane?
I mean, I think I wouldn't, it's hard to say, because it's not that I would say that I was more at home in B2B, but it wasn't because it was B2B versus B2C. You know, when I was running House Values Market Leader, we built a very established business model. And my passion is more around, frankly, the business side, the side I just told you I'm not letting anyone think about, and how you innovate on the business model, than it is about what pixels sit where. So Likewise is still at a stage where I love what I'm doing, but I look forward to it being something that is more about, the business mechanics, and we're not there yet. But I do love the B2C side. I will tell you, it's exciting.
It's got to be more fun at a cocktail party.
It's a lot more fun. It's a lot easier to recruit.
It's sexier.
It's much sexier.
We've never had any candidates not want to interview that we've run past, and thank you for the opportunity to partner with you. So
you found us some very good people, and it's. I mean, and when you're starting out from scratch, 0 to 1.
Those
the only thing that matters.
Oh, yeah. So how have you been deliberate about building a culture? I know that you're passionate about it.
I mean, that's the best part about being CEO is you pick the people you want to work with. I mean, there's nothing that competes with that. And this was a chance to truly go 0 to 1. I was employee 1.
You get to be.
And I was fortunate to find a great CTO, and he built out the engineering team. But from the beginning, I know diversity is a buzzword, but I am passionate, particularly gender. Because, you could say, I have 2 daughters, but truthfully, I saw how much it mattered running Market Leader those years, having, women in positions like my CFO and kind of right hand was a woman for years and years, head of marketing, head of HR, and people behave differently. And more importantly, in some ways, I don't mean behave better.
It's just diversity of thought,
It's diversity of thought. And when you start from scratch like we have at Likewise, and you intentionally recruit some women right off the bat into leadership positions, it is so much easier. People come in, we're not going to pay more than everyone. I'm sure we're going to lose out on a lot. We're a startup. We're going to pay a competitive wage, but I expect good people are going to be able to go out and get more if they really want it.
Yes.
But you bring women in for those other jobs, and they look in, they come through that office to interview, and they look around, and 2/3 of the people there are women, you're going to win most of the time.
Yes.
Because they see that. And age is similar. We have boomers, we have Z, and we have everything in between. And it matters. They think differently.
Who's Z? We're not Z, are we?
No,
who are we?
We're not Z. We're X.
We're X.
We're not even close. We're closer to the boomers. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's right.
I
get confused.
We're more. I get confused too. And let's face it, it's a made-up term. Like, who decides what year is what?
I just know in my head I'm 20, and I'm probably like 33.
Yeah, I'm also. I'm a few years out of college, right?
Yes.
That's how I think of myself.
We're children.
But I can tell you now that I'm higher, I have younger people than I had in the past, and I'm older. I just laugh in the back of my mind because while I feel like I'm one of them, I just always have this fear that when I walk into the room, they see some guy with a cane kind of struggling in and clearing his throat and just like, I think that is what they
told my team I wanted to take them to the Hall & Oates concert. And they were like, who's that? And then they looked it up, and one of my colleagues was like, oh, yeah, that my mom was into them. Yeah. And I was like, oh, my God, in my mind, we're like contemporaries.
Yes, I have that problem every day. Oh, my dad feels that way, too. Like, clueless.
Yeah. So when are you most in your genius zone at work? Like, what lane would you be in if you were hired gun, not as CEO? Would you be the marketer? The product guy?
I came up via marketing, but it's really the This is why I like the board work, the strategy piece of just being able to step back. And the thing with strategy pieces, you don't get to like be the winner every day. You don't get to like, as a board member, you might add value twice in a year, but really important ways. So I'm most comfortable in strategies. You probably could see me getting excited when I started talking about the binge watchers and that as a target customer, because I see the lane there, and it makes sense. And to me, that's more interesting than exactly how we execute the screens to make that happen.
Yes.
You need to get great people to do that. I wish I were natural. I mean,
well, you can't be everything.
Yeah. So I like strategy and I like analytics. I'm not the guy. I mentioned CFO, another person, our head of sales and customer service at Market Leader, worked together for years. He was the first person I recruited out of Microsoft, where we had worked together. He said the most profound thing to me ever. At one point, he just looked at me and he's like, "Ian, you do what and why, and I'll do how." And that was the best thing anyone ever said to me. Moment. It was an aha moment. And once we kind of divided things that way, even though we'd worked together for years, things really started to take off.
Yeah, you were speaking the same language.
And you know what? I was hurt at first because there were meetings going on that I had always been in the past, and I wasn't invited to them. And then I noticed I was in a better mood when I went home at night. Yeah. And then I noticed the company was executing better.
Yeah.
He got me out of the way.
Yeah, you weren't in the way.
And it was great. And it was surprising that it came from someone who I had worked with for a while, but he had gone away for a little while, come back, had the aha.
And the confidence to say that to you.
Yes.
And you were available to listen. Some leaders are just like, screw you, I know better.
It was the best insight ever. I mean,
that's awesome.
What and why.
That's awesome. I want to pivot a little bit to kind of you personally. So I'm curious to know how you go about, I'm guessing you don't structure your day, or do you?
Not a lot.
Not so much.
Structures.
No rituals, or do you have them?
Tennis.
You said you listened to Dan Levitan. His was like, what? You heard that part. I'm like, wow, he's inspiring.
He had some really powerful structure stuff. I am not that person.
I want to be, but
I've thought about people swear by meditation. I mean, my meditation is tennis in the morning. The one area I'm structured is.
I'd like to play you at some point.
I'm afraid.
Are you a 4 or 5?
I'm a 4 or 5, but you played D1 college, right?
Yes, but I'm old and I have a bad back, and I'm whatever. Are you kidding?
Yeah,
I'm fat.
I'm
I can't
older.
play anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
I would love to go out and play though, but that's the one very structure in my day is I try to keep every morning blocked, and there are exceptions. I have a board meeting that day. But I don't take just random meetings early in the morning so that I can get in the workout, and then I'm in a better mood. Then everybody likes me better. My family likes me better, and most of the days that's tennis, and that makes me happy.
And how are you as a parent, as far as what you learned from your parents and what you brought into your home?
Wow, that's a good question. My parents they are just amazing. I mean, there's nothing I didn't get from my parents. Like,
are you more like your mom or dad?
I actually think it's like, sounds like a cop out. Everyone would say I'm more like my dad, because we have the same wit and just kind of
mannerisms,
mannerisms, personalities. My mom though, and I can't emulate my mom in that she's like my mom, and Lisa, my wife, are the two least selfish people I've ever met. It's very easy to go through life with people like that around you because your needs come first even when they don't deserve to. So I'm lucky that way. But my mom just has a people sense and a pragmatism to her, and just a caring that, I always try to emulate. And, she's just the type of person that takes care of everybody's needs.
Yeah,
and,
just a nurturer.
Yeah, I mean, my kids just adore her, and she knows I always laugh because we're on the phone, or when she's out here, she asks questions about Lisa's friends' kids, and she'll ask.
And you're like, who?
Hundreds of people. She asked me, and how's such and such, and did they? How'd their surgery go? And I'm like, I don't even know.
I just had dinner with them last night. I didn't know she had surgery.
Like, she knows the ages of kids. It's fascinating and hysterical to me. Yeah, it is.
That's a skill. That's her being probably pretty present.
She's very present. She cares about the things she cares about, and she knows them inside and out.
Well, I know that you and Lisa have also sent your kids to private school here in Seattle, to Jewish schools. How have those kind of values resonated for you? What does it mean to you to have Jewish values?
So that was wildly unplanned, which a lot of life tends to be that way. I'm from public schools. My mom was a public school teacher. Lisa's mom is a superintendent of schools in New York City. her other sister's a vice principal. Another one is my brother-in-law. All educators, all public school. We were originally, going to send the kids to public school. Our oldest daughter, Hannah, was I don't know, 3 or 4, and a friend of hers was doing like a preschool or something. I don't even know, like at Jewish day school, and she thrived. So we went.
It's an amazing school.
There, and it's a wonderful school. And the values you mentioned, I mean, I'm not a religious, I'm a cultural Jew, as some Jewish people will call it. I'm not wrapped up in the religion piece of it, nor would I have been, if my kids came home one day and like, Daddy, why are you eating pork? That would have been a problem for me. Right? I'm happy,
because you like to eat pork.
Well, yeah, and I just don't. It's not.
That's not how you.
I don't
show
place
up.
Value there.
I get it.
Right? Like, I'm not judging someone that way. Like, I'm not judging someone for having that value. Lisa doesn't eat pork. But to me, it doesn't make her a better person.
Yeah,
she is a better person, but it's not because she doesn't eat pork.
Yes.
But, so my kids, what they got an environment where they were challenged to think. And I was blown away by that at the Jewish day school. The teachers, they would do, I think they called it God Talks. And they would bring in, they had Wiccans come in and ministers and all the different, literally a Wiccan came into class, ministers, all kinds of different religions. And the teachers, first of all, it's a good school of mostly about math and English and science and all those things. Yeah. It's mostly academics. But when they did do that stuff, their opinion was, Judaism is about questioning everything. Well, I don't know if that's true,
it
but
is.
It's just, the analytical side of things. And the kids got that, and they're not particularly, they're different levels of religious, but it's not a religious school.
Yes.
And we were very pleased with that.
We have friends that go there that just love it. So I was just curious if it's, how you came to that decision, because you mentioned the public school thing.
Yeah, no, the values are really that they got are to intellectual curiosity and questioning things. Mm-hmm. And I think with any small school, and JDS is a small school, you're in some ways you're signing up for a community of parents, right? Mm-hmm. Good kids go to that school. Good parents have those good kids.
Parents who value values and who value education. Oh, for sure. Yeah. And so my last few questions, I can't really picture it because you seem intense. So I'm like, okay, so you're working, you're with the kids, you're playing tennis, but how do you relax / kind of self-care?
I think the workouts, the tennis is a big part of that, honestly.
That's your self-care.
I like this time of year because I'll also
even when you're dropping your racket.
Yeah, dropping. And that's rare. I don't want to overstate
dropping.
That is
paddleboarding?
I love to paddleboard.
I'm down. Can I go?
Yes. I have 2 paddleboards. They're sitting at the shore club. We can go later.
Done and done.
I'm serious. I really, it's good for me too because I have very poor balance. And I just decided one day, I love water. I will be bad at this. Why don't I just do it a few times and see? And
it's great, especially as we get older. It's great to practice that balance.
You feel connected. You can do it with someone, or you can just be totally solitary and disappear for 2 hours.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. That's fantastic. And so my final question for you is, as you know, because you listened to a podcast before, is what fuels you? This better be epic.
I don't know if it's epic.
I'm just kidding.
It really is the people part. Obviously you want to win and all that, but I love the people part of things. I look back at my career to this day. The thing I took away most, the thing I'm most excited about was, as I mentioned, market leader. When things got bad, they got bad, and they stayed bad for a while, and we had to cut the company down in size. And there was still a good tech market here for employees, and some people left. And, but my goal was to keep all the top players, and couldn't keep all of them, right? But we tried. And there was no real good reason to go work at market leader. There was nothing great going on. It was a slog, right? And as CEO, you sell the vision, you try to keep the best people. And a lot of them stayed, and some left and came back because we did turn it around.
Yeah.
And the best part of all that was, the good people who stayed, we were fortunate. We had a good outcome. They did really well.
That's awesome.
And no one can take that away. It was a great outcome. I'm still very close friends with a lot of those people. And, they look back fondly. And we had a lot of people leave in hard times, come back later. It was a culture. And I'm proud of that more so than the business outcome. I guess I'm proud of that too. But it was... the people aspect really, really matters, and it's something that is always close to me. And I'm glad those people did well, because if I had been a friend of theirs, knowing just a little bit about the situation, I probably would have told them to leave and go do something that isn't as hard. And the ones that stuck in there did really well, and I love that.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm totally rooting for you, and likewise. And anyone and everyone who's listening, download Likewise app.
Yes.
ASAP.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to the What Fuels You podcast. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes, Google Podcasts, or Spotify, and follow us on social media to keep up with the latest news and episodes. You can also contact us at podcast@fueltalent.com to provide feedback, ask questions, and share topics or guests you would like us to cover in the future. We hope you feel inspired by our guests and that we have helped fuel your day. Join us next time for another episode of What Fuels You.